Welcome to Truth or Raps. Um, if this video indeed goes up, I'm not sure if the last one, well, there's a sort of a Freudian slip. I was starting to say the final one, or the most recent one before this would have been posted, or the most recent one that has been posted while this is being recorded anyway. I'm not sure if that's going to be the last one. Maybe it is. But I'm going to take a step back into the land of conservative talk radio for a second here. As little of that relatively as I really, like I listened to a lot of stuff like that for like a year or so, and then some of that stuff, but not even all that I could really. And although given that I was listening to a lot of Catholic radio, which was like not 1.5% conservative radio, but it was like, I'd say, it was probably more than 50% conservative in terms of what they were saying. But although they still had some of the propaganda and stuff. And anyway, and also I think Christians shoot themselves in the foot a lot because maybe they haven't come to the realization of this for themselves. But I think they really shoot themselves in the foot when they talk about sexual orientation and stuff, because it seems very clear to me, and I think this is something that still very, very few people anywhere have said or are saying, but it seems very clear to me that it really is, when there is sexual aberration, as L. Ron Hubbard refers to it. I'm not a Scientologist, but I think, he pointed some things out in a really sort of bright, shining way that other people haven't. Of course, it's very dubious, his whole thing with, like, the military outfits for, like, some of his stuff and, whatever else he was doing. Like, a lot of that seemed kind of dubious, but he did have some pretty clear statements that seem a lot more penetrative into various matters than a lot of other people have had. And one of them being, calling out sexual aberration for what it is. Like, sexuality is a reproduction thing. It's a reproductive act. The point of sexual reproduction, the point of sex, is to produce children. Anything that's not producing children, that's being sort of substituted in for sex that produces children, is not natural. Like, truly, I'm not saying that as an insult, I'm saying that as a description as far as I see it. It's not natural because the natural process is procreation, and if instead of one thing that would be a procreative act, you're instead substituting in something that is not procreative, then to me that's not even sex. Like, I get the idea of referring to it as sexual, given that like some things such as orgasm might be involved in stuff, but to me that's not sex. Just literally. Like, that goes for everything. Like, is kissing sex? No. It's not sex. It's not sexual reproduction. Is like oral sex so-called actual sex? No, it's not. Like, it's not sexual reproduction. Sex is sex. Like, that's what it is. A equals A. Say what you will and say what I will about other things that Ayn Rand seemed to be pushing. Nevertheless, one good thing that I'd point to her about is A equals A. Something is something. I've talked about it before. This extends to places that a lot of people, or that some people you might see, seem to have double standards about. So like your truth or my truth. There is no your truth, there is no my truth. It's the truth or it's not. So you may feel a certain way about something. You might call that your truth, but it's not. It's the truth that you feel a certain way about something. And then your analysis of something might be your analysis. That analysis may be completely 100% accurate, and in that case it would be an accurate analysis, and it would be an accurate analysis that in accuracy reflects the truth. But there is no your truth or my truth. There is the truth. And actually, someone like Stefan Molyneux, I pick on him sometimes, but clearly I've listened to some of his stuff, and I've gotten. You might assume I got enough out of what I had listened to keep listening to in certain places, and yeah, I've listened to a decent amount of Stefan, and not even just a little while ago, like fairly recently. But in I think his book called like On Truth or something, and I've talked about this before, he brings up the idea of truth as being something that is verifiable. And so he says it's not true. He says something like this, and it sounds really ridiculous when you put it into these words. Maybe he phrases it in a way that sounds a little less ridiculous, but what he said was literally, not even just basically, but I think literally, and you can go check the book, check the book for like a section talking about dreams or something to see, but literally he says, in so many words maybe, it is not true that you had a dream last night, because it's not verifiable that you had that dream. And it's like, no, fuck you, Stefan. If you had a dream last night, if you actually had a dream last night, it is true that you had that dream. Now, can it be verified? Is it verifiable? Maybe in some really technologically superior way, you could somehow verify what someone had dreamed, and even perhaps in some way, some technology, perhaps far in the future of what most people are going to see, you could even go back in time to verify what someone's dream was. I'm not saying that's necessarily a possibility, but I am saying maybe there would be a technology that could do that. But either way, truth doesn't have to be verifiable. And that may sound insane to some people, but I'm literally saying truth doesn't have to be verifiable. The only thing truth has to be is true. And I'm also not saying here that you can just, say anything and it's true, because Matt said on Truth Erupts that truth doesn't have to be verifiable. Doesn't have to be verifiable means, in the way I'm saying it, that you don't have to have verified, you don't have to be able to say, this is how I verify that something is true. If you had a dream, it's true that you had the dream. And notice I said if you had a dream, it's true that you had the dream. If you didn't have a dream, then it's not true that you had a dream that you didn't have. But anyway, to get to the talk radio sense of it that I referred to earlier, can you believe that there literally is not only, like, I think it's so incredibly artificially, and I don't even know why it's being called Gamergate 2. Like, wasn't Gamergate, I think I've looked into it multiple times and been explained it multiple times, and I still don't really know necessarily what it was, but wasn't Gamergate just like gamers criticizing certain people for something, and then that being taken as like gamers having some kind of like widespread harassment campaign against something, or like maybe there was something that was, maybe some of it was harassing in nature, maybe some of it wasn't, but there was something that was called harassment, and then but it was referred to as gamers harassing people, and then the gamers like went after the people saying they were harassing people or something online. I mean, not like in a physical way as far as I know, but like just online, like they just basically, they got accused of harassment or something, and then they criticized the people who were accusing them of harassment, when I imagine many of them might have, if what I'm laying out here is even remotely relatable to what happened, I imagine many of them might have assumed the original thing that was referred to as harassment was just them criticizing somebody, which is different. You can be really snide and mean and like sarcastic and acidic and evil with how you like talk to somebody, or you can be very direct and upfront and say, no, what you're saying is bullshit, or like this thing is not true, or like pointing something out about something, and not be evil and mean and snide about it. And so the former stuff, I would say, could at least form the foundation or form elements of what might be referred to as harassment. But the latter, unless it's done in a really repetitive way or something like that, like the latter seems to me to be more likely to be something referred to as harassment when it's not. But I'm startled that now there's something called Gamergate 2 where, yes, as I was saying, I'm not even sure why it's called Gamergate 2. I guess given if the hazy outlining of what Gamergate 1 might have been is, and by the way, there seems to be like a World War I, World War II type of thing going on with it, or you could say that there was, so that might be an element of it somewhere deep in the machinations. But in terms of like having it have various connotations and then having those connotations really play the part, perhaps almost entirely themselves rather than the events themselves, like the connotations of the titles of these things playing some part in how things are done by the controlling classes in the future and stuff, and maybe it's like it is a real cultural insert in terms of like them trying to do things, them being the people trying to do things behind the scenes maybe, and so maybe as silly as it sounds, Gamergate 1, and maybe if this is Gamergate 2 or will be referred to it as being so, maybe these are like legitimately big cultural things, not to say that they're not totally manipulated, but like they're being manipulated into legitimately big signposts for other things to be pointed to in favor of.